Welcome everyone to another edition of the Walkoff. Of course, I'm Vincent McCona. I'm joined by Anthony Walsh. Anthony, how are we doing today? A little bit new of a setup for this week, but something new every week.
We improvise, we adapt, we overcome all our issues, and we're still giving you episodes. So,
Yes.
but yeah, as far as Mets wise, we'll get into it. But a lot of stuff going on, new era beginning, and I have some thoughts on it. We'll get into it.
Yeah, I mean, why don't we just jump right into it then?
Okay, let's do it.
So we'll start with the goodbyes, not necessarily just retirements, but also firings. The Mets had kind of a big one yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I didn't see it coming, but Anthony, we were talking about it a little earlier. You said you did see it coming. Buck Showalter is no longer the Mets manager and is stepping down.
Yeah, stepping down, aka fired, because he revealed that they told him either you step down or we fire you. So he was fired. But yeah, I mean, I didn't see it coming prior to David Stern's news. Once the David Stern's news kind of happened, I was like, well, unless he really is in love with Buck, I don't think he's gonna keep him. I think he's probably gonna go for counsel. But I think that also depends on how this postseason goes with the Brewers. I mean, if the Brewers go on to miraculously win a World Series or even get to a World Series, is he going to be comfortable leaving Milwaukee? I mean, he's been there his whole career as a manager. I don't know. It's an interesting. His contract's up, so it's anything could happen, and we all know the relationship he has with Stearns. But it'll be interesting. I don't know. You think Council's going to be a Met manager, or what do you think's going to happen?
I don't know yet. I think it's too soon to really decide for me. I know I remember that Bob Melvin's on the market, the Padres manager, but I mean anyone is they'll find a manager. I think if the Mets really want to succeed, don't go with a new manager. They tried that
No,
before
I wouldn't
and
do
it
it.
didn't really work out.
Especially, I mean, it's not so much a veteran team anymore, but you have all, well, actually, it's the opposite. It's a lot of rookies on this team now. You got Alvarez, Vientos, Beatty, Mauricio, obviously. And so I don't know if having a newcomer would necessarily work. I feel like you got to have a guy that knows how to manage a locker room, knows the expectations of New York, and knows how to win, knows that has winning experience. Council meets some of those requirements. I mean, he has some winning experience with the Brewers. He doesn't have any experience with the New York, so he doesn't meet that. But he's managed young players before. He's had success. So I don't know if there's anybody that necessarily meets every single requirement. That never really is. But yeah, to me, there's no way you could go hire some bench coach that's never done it before, or pitching coach or whatever. I don't. You could maybe do that in the future when Alvarez and all them are kind of in their prime. But right now, these guys are still in their early 20s. I mean, these are still very new, players to baseball, so to Major League Baseball. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think it's most likely going to be Council, but if not, I really don't. I don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah, and I mean, this is not the season that the Mets wanted whatsoever. I mean, it's it's a hard team to watch sometimes
Yeah,
now.
it is.
I mean, especially for Mets fans. But all in all, I mean, they took their losses. I don't like what they did with the manager situation. I mean, you have your thoughts on Billy Epler.
Oh yeah.
But they're setting themselves up pretty well. You know, the Scherzer trade, they get Acuna, who could, I don't know if he's going to be good or anything, but you're setting yourself up with a couple really good prospects.
The future, I mean, yeah, it looks bright. I mean, obviously, you don't know Drew Gilbert, Acuna, a number of other guys how they're going to pan out, but like Buck said in his post-game press conference, his final press conference for the Mets, he's like, whoever's walking in here is walking into a pretty solid situation. There's a lot of talent here. There's a lot of chance to improve. And, it could go badly very quickly, but it could also, the Mets could be very well back into the playoffs very soon. So yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be interesting. All I gotta say is David Stearns better have someone that's better than Buck, because unlike a lot of the other Mets firings, I was just talking about Vincent. A lot of the Mets firings in the past have been really, the coaches have been pretty pathetic. I mean, you go down Mickey Callaway. I don't think Luis Rojas is necessarily pathetic, but it was too early. He wasn't ready yet. Terry towards the end of his run. So a lot of these guys, it was kind of obvious. Buck, it wasn't obvious by any means. I mean, there's people that don't like him for reasons with the bullpen and everything, but he's well respected. He's had success. He's been in the league for over 30 years now. And it's a rare time in Mets history where they make kind of controversial firing. I mean, last time I could think of the Mets doing this was Willie Randolph in the 2000s after the Mets collapsed, but that was after a really major collapse. So yeah, I don't know. It's if you're gonna bring somebody in, it better be better than Buck, because it could very easily be worse than Buck. You couldn't get much worse than Rojas after Rojas. You couldn't get much worse than Callaway after Callaway, but you can get very much worse than Buck after Buck's fired now. So they better not make a mistake. This is as far as well say.
Yeah. I don't know. I've always been a fan of Buck. Even when he became the Mets manager, I liked him in Baltimore. I liked him in New York, and
Texas and the
yes,
Yankees, yeah.
I don't know. It's sad to see. There is a manager, however, that I did like to see go. Not even for my team, but once for my team, Gabe Kapler. Gabe Kapler also got fired. I don't think by anyone's surprise. The Giants were an awful team this year. Or not awful. They went on a nice little playoff run, but they're not anything extraordinary.
Right.
And I think that's something that they were looking to do. They don't really have the pieces to do it, which it's hard, but I've heard of how Gabe Kapler manages, and it just doesn't seem the right way to manage. So I'm happy with the firing. I think the Giants should look for a new future, maybe a new future star if they can find one, because what they have right now is not working.
Yeah, I think 2021 for Gabe Kapler can only run him so far. I mean, it bought him to obviously 22, and it bought him to 23. But really, outside of the 2021 season, he hasn't done very much. You look at the managerial record, not that it's super long, but he failed with the Phillies. For the most part, he failed with the Giants. I think looking back at 2021, it was just kind of a very lucky lightning in a bottle type situation where a lot of veterans had this, the seasons of their career out of nowhere kind of went back to their prime. It was a very odd year for them. And
we call that the fluke season. All the time. Yeah. Every time we mention something's like a big fluke, we always go back to 2021.
A fluke is the perfect way to say it, because I mean, they could have very well won a World Series that year, but they didn't, and it was kind of a one and done deal. And Kapler didn't have to really do anything to do with that success. So you take away that year, there's not much to be impressed by with Gabe Kapler. So it's not a shocker to me either. I think he's probably going to go on to be the bench coach somewhere. I don't think he's going to be a manager again for a while anyway.
Now, a manager that might be leaving. Well, I want to hear your thoughts on it. The other side of New York, Aaron Boone. Do you think he kind of gets tossed to the side now?
I don't think so. It's tough because I mean, I still think they have to kind of have someone that they could blame in a way. I mean, obviously no team's gonna directly blame a guy, but like the Mets do a Buck Showalter, they're kind of saying, look, this is the piece that we're really gonna be getting rid of from this 2023 team. We're doing something to address this awful season. And it's kind of a way to say to the fans that we're making changes in addition to bringing in Stearns. But when it comes to the Yankees, it's tough because can I see Brian Cashman going anywhere? Maybe. But for whatever reason, the Yankees just seem to be in love with Aaron Boone. I mean, I kind of equate it to what it is with Zach Wilson with the Jets. Like, he's done nothing but fail, really. But for whatever reason, they're nothing but positive towards him. So I don't really get it. I mean, Aaron Boone seems like a very nice guy, but a nice guy doesn't make you a good manager.
No.
So it could happen. Do I think it will? No. I think it'll be either Cashman or Boone. I think Cashman might be on his way out. I think that the Yankee fans really let Steinbrenner hear it over this season. And I just don't see them wanting to go into this offseason with a manager search. Because there's not many candidates out there that would be, I guess, obvious picks. Not that there ever really is. But I just don't see them wanting to go through that search. I could very well be wrong. I mean, they could still hold on to Brian Cashman for the 80th year in a row. But I really just see Cashman being the fallout guy, and them saying, "Look, we want new leadership in here, but we're gonna stick with Aaron for this year." I think. But what do you think? You agree or not?
I think he's on the outs.
Okay.
I think they're gonna keep Cashman because they don't want to blame the GM. I think that's plain and simple. I don't think it's the right move. I would rather see both of them go.
I agree.
Because Boone's listen, Boone's a good manager. He's all right, but he's like, I don't know. He's too aggressive with his managerial styles. He gets ejected, what feels like every other week. That's not the way to go about it. And just the Yankees have what I think is an all right future. I think if they can make some changes this offseason, I mean, now you have a lot of time to think. You're going to see, a bunch of teams, three AL East teams in the playoffs, and you're not one of them. I mean, I believe it's the first time since the 90s or 80s that the Red Sox, Cardinals, and Yankees, Red Sox, Cardinals are not in the playoffs. Any of those three teams.
Those are some iconic franchises, all of them. I mean, and I think it's the first time in like 10 years that both the Mets and Yankees themselves have both not been in the playoffs. Like one of
Yeah.
them, at least one of them hasn't been in the playoff series.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, when it comes to the Yankees, when they're not in the playoffs, heads should roll because they're a franchise that bare minimum you're expected to be in the playoffs. Bare minimum. You're expected to win the World Series pretty much every year, as crazy as that sounds. But that's the Yankees. And I think that expectation's kind of dwindled over the years. I mean, it's been
Yeah.
less and less ever since George has left. And now you're way past remove that. And the House Steinbrenner era has been very bad. It has been. They've made the playoffs the least out of probably since the 1980s, which is one of their worst decades.
Mhm.
They've won the World Series the least in, I don't even know how much. I mean, I guess since from 77 to when they won it in the mid 90s. That was the longest drought since, but we're getting closer and closer to that. 20 years almost for now. 15 years is going to be. So we're getting closer and closer to 20. And that's really unheard of for the Yankees. So something's got to happen. If it were up to me, I agree. I would get rid of both of them. But I don't think Hal's that type of guy. I really don't. I think he's going to probably choose Cashman, I think. And it'll be kind of a surprise because Cashman's been in the organization so long. But I can't see him making much more changes after that. I feel like he's going to be like, well, that's enough. What else more do you want me to do? I think that's going to be his attitude.
Do you think that the winning culture in New York for both teams has kind of dwindled away? I feel like it feels so much different. Like watching baseball in New York in back from 2009 to 2015. Like it feels so different, so different. I mean, Yankees keep getting beat. Even when they make the playoffs, they make a fool of themselves in the ALCS. I don't know. I hate to see it go because even though I'm a Phillies fan, and even though I'm not the biggest Mets fan, you have to love. Maybe a little bit of an understatement there, but you have to love seeing New York in the playoffs. Like we're on the East Coast. I love Philly in the playoffs, but New York in the playoffs is one of the greatest things to see.
Yeah, I mean it's a weird time because like I just said, like it's been about 10 years since both of them, at least not one of them, has been in. And you can never really name this long of a time period now where neither team has won like a championship. You go through the decades, usually it's the Yankees, to be fair, that are winning, that keep up the kind of streak, so to speak. But at least one of them is doing something. I mean, in the 80s when the Yankees faltered, the Mets were winning. 70s when the Mets were faltering, the Yankees were winning. Same thing with the 60s with the Mets winning in 69. So I don't know. It's weird. I don't. I think one of these teams is gonna kind of get back to their winning ways. One of them's not. It's 50-50 right now. I really think that if the prospects don't work out with the Mets, it's definitely gonna be the Mets. But with the Yankees, they're also not that far away. You still have Aaron Judge on your team. Garrett Cole had a very underrated season this year. Is up in the Cy Young rankings. I mean, nobody really talked about it because the Yankees have been so bad. But Garrett Cole, I mean, you got to keep in mind where this guy was at just the past few years. He was pretty bad, especially against the Red Sox. And this season, he kind of proved that, he proved that wrong. He said, I am still Garrett Cole. I'm still the guy that was with the Pirates and early when he was in his Yankees tenure. I'm still the ace. And they still have that talent. They just got to figure things out. Not to mention Jason Dominguez. So they have a lot of decisions to make. I think they should do an overhaul. Will they do it? A total one? I don't see it. I think either one of them is going to go, but not both, which it should happen. I agree with
you. Interesting. Now, we had some sad retirements yesterday. I think the biggest one is future Hall of Famer Miguel Cabrera.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw the entire stadium had the Miggy, they had the 500, they had 3,000 hits, the 24 and center field with the baseball, hit count and home run count with it. I, I mean, I didn't get to watch the entire game, but like the plays that Miggy was making, it's almost it's sad to see him go.
Yeah, I mean, he's the longest. I think he's the been in the league the longest since it was 2003. I mean, I don't think
Yeah,
there's anybody in the longest.
he is the last player now to ever have versed.
The Expos.
Yeah,
Yeah, I saw that.
that's crazy.
And I mean, I thought it was kind of cool how the manager came out with his family, and they were showing. I think it was his mother or his grandma. I think probably his mother in the crowd, be crying, watching him, watching his like his daughters were there. But yeah, it's certainly a big moment. I mean, he's one of the legends of baseball for sure. And I mean, one of the clips I was making the rounds was Clemens facing him, and he were in the World Series when the Yankees played the Florida Marlins. And that at bat, I mean, I didn't realize how good of an at bat that was. I don't know if you saw that clip, but it's just crazy to see. I mean, a guy facing Roger Clemens that's still playing in the league is pretty crazy. So, yeah, it really tells you the generations. I mean, with the baseball he's seen, I mean, he's gone from Roger Clemens to now, the aces of today, and he's faced them all, and he's done pretty well up until these last few seasons when he's kind of gotten old.
Yeah,
But he was pretty consistent. I mean, from 03 to a solid like 2017, 18, he was an all-star pretty much every year. I mean, I think Hall of Famer. I think that's pretty obvious.
first ballot.
Yeah, it should be definitely. And so props to him. He said he had a great career.
Yeah, and the last player now, the most recent player to win the Triple Crown.
Yeah.
And you can see that a little bit more in pitching, but batting, you almost never see that.
Yeah, I mean, that probably was about 10 years ago, 10, 15. It's been a long time. I don't even remember it. So had to have been.
I think it's 2012.
Yeah, so 11 years ago now. I mean, it's pretty crazy. And I mean, I guess maybe you'll see it more often now with the new rule changes and hitting becoming more.
Yeah,
but it's still something I think we probably won't see for another few years. I think the league's got to adjust more to these rules, and I think it'll eventually become the norm, and hitting will really become supreme. But he did it in that era where he didn't have those rules, and it's kind of the same thing we talked about Ricky Henderson with stolen bases. I think it's going to be looked at differently, fair or not fair. That baseball was a different game back then when he was doing that, and I think kind of deserves more credit. It was harder to do. So yeah, I mean, he's definitely one of the legends we saw yesterday go to the field the final time. And it sucks to see, but it was definitely time for him.
Yeah, it was time for him. A great player, first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, the Tigers in a rebuild right now.
Yeah.
And not that they needed him to go, but it's probably better for the organization that he left.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what's up next for me and for the Tigers. Now, we had some other goodbyes. We saw Adam Wainwright, who threw out his arm, so he can't pitch anymore. But he had a final at bat. You kind of like to see it, trying to get him in any way possible. We saw him. We saw Zach Greinke, who had a pretty good game against the Yankees.
Yeah.
We saw Joey Votto.
That was interesting. That was very interesting. He went out very Joey Votto-esque. Basically, if anybody doesn't know, he got thrown out of the game. And it could, we don't know for sure yet, but it could very well be his last game ever. And so pretty wild. I think he went on Twitter and apologized. He said, sorry to anybody that came to see me play. I shouldn't have been yelling at him, but emotion got the best of me. I respect it. I mean, to me, it shows you that he was still into a game that didn't end up mattering. And a lot of guys would have just said, screw it, this is my last game. I want to have the accolades. I want the standing ovation. Who cares? But he's the ultimate competitor, and he showed that yesterday. I mean, in games like that, you really see who's about it and who's not about it. Because if you're really about it, then you care about that game as much as you care about any other game that really matters. So respect to him. I mean, I really think he should go. He's just not what he was.
No.
And I think he was really good in the booth. If he wants to go do that and as an opening there, he should do it. Or maybe in a pre-post game type of thing. But I think his playing career should be over.
He's always been a great personality of baseball.
Yeah.
He's always had a smile on his face. And, when he doesn't, he's kind of helping out Cincinnati, which you love. One of the few players that has played for the same team for his entire career. I mean, even Miguel Cabrera didn't.
Right.
I mean, he talked about he played for the Marlins for 1 or 2 years. And then he went over to Detroit. So you gotta love it. It's sad to see him go again. It's sad to see all these players go.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll sound like a broken record if you go over every player because everyone's sad to see go. I mean, the only one that isn't really sad to see go is Adam Wainwright because he should have gone last year.
Yeah, he was the worst out of all of them. I mean, not that Miguel Cabrera was doing anything special, but Adam Wainwright was a liability, like a major liability. I mean, he had one of the worst ERAs in baseball. It was time. I mean, he should have really went with Pujols and Molina. But some guy, he's a competitor. He tried. I respect that, but he ended up harming his team. But it's over now. People should be looking at his career. He had so many. He had much more great moments than he had bad moments. He did a lot for St. Louis, helped contribute their world championships. So, he deserves a lot of respect, and he's another Hall of Famer.
Yeah, and Zach Greinke is leaving now. Another big personality of baseball. My big question to you is Joey Votto Hall of Famer? Because I feel like it's obvious Cabrera is,
Yeah,
and I would say I don't know what you think, but I don't think Wayno's a Hall of Famer.
you don't think Wainwright's a Hall of
I
Famer?
don't think so.
Really?
I think he'll get into the Hall of Fame because of guys like Scott Rowland.
Do you think he's that level? He's like a Scott Rowland level?
I think he's a Scott Rowland.
Wow. Okay.
I really liked Wayno, but I didn't think he was, the best of the best.
I think he's a Hall of Famer. I wouldn't have any. I mean, not first ballot, but I think he's a Hall of Fame. I don't put it this way. There's guys that have gotten pitchers that have gotten into the Hall of Fame. Not even recently, with the expansion of it. There's been pitchers over the past 30, 40 years that aren't as good as him that have made it. So I mean, I wouldn't have any problem. I'd just be very surprised not to see it, especially in this expansion era of the Hall of Fame. I mean, you have guys in there now that are just factually way worse than them. Haven't had nowhere near as good of a career. I know different positions, Scott Rowland you mentioned, but that's a perfect example. So yeah, I have no problem with him being in. But as far as Motto, I mean, I would say yeah. I think he would probably be one of those like golden era, whatever they call it, like the era committee where it's like 30 years from now he gets in, like kind of like Scott Rowland got in. So I would say yes, but not anytime soon. He didn't. It's not his fault that they didn't win in Cincinnati with him. I mean, teams were just never really there. But yeah, I would say he is. You don't think he is, or what do you think? No.
No, there's not much. I don't know. I feel like he was a great player. I don't think Greinke or him should be in.
Greinke, I agree. Greinke didn't. I mean, Greinke was very good, but he didn't do it long enough.
No.
I think that's the main difference between all these guys. Is at least the other guys did it for like a solid 10, 12 years.
Yeah.
Greinke did it for solid, like being elite, 5 or 6. Then he was good for another, few years.
You need to have longer, greatness. I want to say Joey Votto is, but I don't think he is.
Okay, that's fair.
I don't think he is. I think of this crew, it's just Cabrera. First ballot, Cabrera. If anything past that, it would be Wayno. And then last would be Greinke. So right above him is Votto.
Okay.
Votto had a great time. I mean, he won MVP back in 2015, but it's sometimes an MVP. It is what it is. I mean, Christian Yelich won an MVP.
That's true.
He won't be a Hall of Famer, sadly. But now we're on to the playoffs.
Yes.
Very exciting time for baseball. I mean, October baseball is where it's at. September baseball kind of gets a little dragged down, playoff races end, especially this week, playoff races end. They took it to the final day. I mean, Rangers kind of thought that they had it in the bag, and they drop it. They drop it to the Astros.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, Astros still proving that they are what they are. They're still elite, and there were some doubters, including myself. I mean, I at the end I was starting to get a little bit like, but I think they still are a great team. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was also interesting the Marlins, what happened with the Mets, like the whole rainout stuff, and the manager like wanting to fight the Mets grounds crew. That was kind of funny. But it ended up not mattering anyway. They clinched. But if they didn't, they would have had to play today, a day before they would play their wild card series, which would have been insane. I kind of wish it would have happened because it would have just been funny. But I don't know. It was just really a weird situation. that ended up not mattering, but it could have really been like one of those things you look back on like, whoa, like, how did that happen?
Yeah, I saw they took the picture in front of the grounds crew. In front of
Everybody was all the 10 Marlin fans that were out there like on Twitter were like, how are they doing that? Like I thought there'd be more response. Like there was hardly anybody complaining. I was like, geez, the Marlins fan base is like very rough right now. But not that that's that surprising. We were just talking about that last episode about how the Miami really isn't the greatest baseball town. But
No, it really isn't. But they make it into the playoffs.
yeah,
They
so
make it into second wild card, so they'll take on the Phillies. Their first starter is Jesus Luzardo, which should be interesting against Zach Wheeler for game one. I'll be there, so I'm very excited for that. It'll be a pitching matchup for sure. Then we have Diamondbacks Brewers. On the other side, we have Twins. It'll be Twins, Blue Jays. It'll be Rangers, Rays. I mean, we have some good series set up. The one that I don't like is the Rays Rangers. I think it's so boring. Especially that's being played in Tampa.
The one I don't like is the Blue Jays Twins. I think that's gonna
Really?
be. I think
Oh, it's gonna be such a blowout.
The Blue Jays are gonna kill them.
It's so boring. Oh yeah.
And you look at all these teams, the one outlier is the Twins. Everybody else you can kind of look at and say, oh, that's a playoff team. The Twins are like, how the hell do they get in it? Because they're not, they don't belong. They're in a terrible division. So that's gonna be really boring to me. I see what you mean by Texas, Tampa Bay, but I mean Texas is a fun team to watch. So is Tampa Bay. So I know what you mean, but I think there's more to watch there.
I think my one thing with Tampa is that I think they're doing something incredible. You know, they're kind of working these not star players and they're winning games. But I don't know. After 162 games, I kind of get bored. Sure. And I want to see the star power. I want to see the Bryce Harpers in the league, which I think I mentioned last show. But I don't know. Now, Anthony, now that we are one day away from playoffs, I think it's time for some predictions.
I think we should do the predictions all the way through. That way, there's no bias. Everything's fresh, and you know, there's no way any of us could feel. Oh, one team's playing worse, and now we could predict the other way. We don't know anything right now. I think it's the perfect time to predict.
All right, we'll start series by series. Okay, Blue Jays Twins. I feel like we can agree. Blue Jays.
Like we could agree on that.
Rangers Rays.
Rangers. I'm going Rangers.
I'm gonna say Rays take this one.
Really?
Okay. I think the Rangers are too cold, and that's what's gonna hurt them a lot.
Okay, that's fair.
Diamondbacks Brewers.
I'm gonna go Brewers. It could go either way, but I'm gonna go Brewers. It's a tough one. It is. They're pretty equal. I mean, they're not. Neither one is much better than the other.
Neither of them are overpowering.
That too.
I'm gonna go Diamondbacks.
Okay.
I'm gonna go Diamondbacks there. A little 6 seed again. Takes the wild card.
Okay.
And then Phillies Marlins.
Phillies. I'm going
Phillies. Okay. So do we predict the ALDS or?
Yeah, I want to go all the way through. I want to go to World Series winner because then if one of us gets this right, all the way right.
All right.
There's no way for us to have nothing's happened yet. So there's no
way. That. Blue Jays Twins. Sorry. Astros Blue Jays.
Astros. I think we agree.
I think Astros, yeah.
For you, it's gonna be Orioles, Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and for you it'll be Rangers.
Right.
Orioles or Rangers, Orioles.
I'm going Orioles. I think the Orioles are. I think even if I'm wrong, the Orioles are gonna win that.
I think the Orioles are also gonna win. Okay. Diamondbacks or Brewers. So I'm Diamondbacks or Brewers against Dodgers.
So I would say Brewers, Dodgers.
Yeah. Dodgers make it into the CS. Okay. Phillies, Braves.
Braves.
I'm gonna go Phillies here.
Really?
I'm seriously sticking with Philly on this one.
You're confident then.
I'm confident. I'm very confident.
Realistically, though, I mean, we'll hear in a second from you, but if they beat the Braves, then they should be winning the World Series. There's really nobody else that should be beating them.
I like the Dodgers, but if you can, okay, the Dodgers choke in the playoffs. So if anyone's gonna beat the Dodgers, it can be the Phillies. It could. Oh, hold up. Never mind. Sorry. Basketball news. I saw PHI. I was like, oh, baseball. Some breaking news on the walk-off, but not here. Okay. Astros Orioles in the CS, the NLCS, Battles of the Oranges.
This is tough. I mean, because I've been so high on the Astros all year. Orioles have been so impressive though, man. I'm gonna go Houston strictly because we have no idea how these young guys are gonna play right now. I could feel very different about this in like 3 or 4 days. Like that, I could feel well actually longer than that because they're not gonna play for them. But I'll say like another week or two. I could feel very different about this because if the Orioles go out there and Adley Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson, all those guys are playing like they look like their normal selves. I mean, that's not a guarantee they'll do it in the World Series too, but I'll feel more confident in that. But right now, there's no way of knowing. And this Orioles team as a whole hasn't been in the playoff series in such a long time. And the last time they were there, there's like nobody left. Like it's a totally new team. So I gotta go Astros. I can't go Orioles in this matchup. I understand if you do, but I gotta go Astros.
I have to go Astros too. It's not just that, it's pitching.
That too.
Orioles don't really have pitching. Astros do, and they know how to hit. So they're a team built for the playoffs. I mean, they make it this close in the division series, and they always make it to the playoffs. I think 2023, the Astros will make it to the playoffs, to the World Series. All right. Dodgers, Braves, and mine is Dodgers, Phillies.
I'm going Braves. I don't think Dodgers choke, so I'm not.
Yeah.
I'd be shocked if Dodgers beat the Braves in the championship series this year.
I'm gonna go Phillies again.
Wow.
You
you are getting cocky here, Phillies.
I know I'm getting cocky, but I don't know. Something was special about October baseball last year, and I might be wrong. They honestly, it stinks because it's a very even matchup in the wild card, and then if anyone goes down, like if the Phillies are gonna, how can I put this? If the Braves are gonna go cold, they'll go cold immediately, and the Phillies can take advantage of that because they'll be warm because they've just played the playoffs. I don't think the Dodgers can beat the Phillies. I like the Dodgers a lot, but their pitching doesn't really compare. I think October baseball is going to take the best of them once again. But yeah, so a 2023 rematch.
See, okay.
I don't really want it. I'd honestly rather see any other team in the World Series except for Houston, but I don't know if we're going to see that.
Really. Yeah, I don't. You go down the line here. The only team that really has a shot, I think, is the Orioles, and they're not ready yet.
No.
I would be really shocked if Texas or Tampa Bay did it. And to me, the Blue Jays, Twins, I mean, there's really no shot for either one of them either. So.
No. This happens. All right. Phillies, Astros once again in the playoffs.
So I got
Braves,
Astros, Braves. Yeah.
So 2021 rematch. 2022 rematch.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, very well, either one of those could really very well happen. So I mean, that is. I think we're definitely not going to see two new teams. I don't think it's going to be two totally new teams. I think it's either going to be Phillies, it's either going to be Astros, it's either going to be Braves, and there's going to be a team that's been in it recently.
In the 2020s.
Yeah, there's going to be a team that's been in it recently. You're not going to see any of these teams that haven't been in it in 20, 30 years all of a sudden come in. I don't think any of those teams are ready yet. But let me hear what if you say the Phillies are going to win, I'm going to be very surprised.
I'm going to say Phillies are going to win.
Really?
I think they upgraded the hitting, and I think that was their worst part last year was they couldn't hit.
Wow. Okay.
They pitched really well at times. When they weren't pitching, they also weren't hitting, so it kind of hurt each other. And like the last game was 3-1. The only shot was from Schwarber, but also you had Bohm who was hitting like 270 last year, and you had Bryson Stott who was hitting like 240. Both of them have bumped up their averages. They both know how to hit now, and they both can hit a little bit farther. Mark can hit a little bit farther. I don't know. They also have a franchise record for most players on the team with 20 home runs. So I'd like to see, and also Turner. I mean, WBC Turner, I'm really hoping comes out, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see.
I'm gonna ask you, how many games? Who's the MVP?
Okay, that's a good question. Philly in 7.
Wow, that'll be exciting.
7. and the MVP is. Oh man, who do I go with here? Give me Trey Turner. I
Okay.
think if they win the NLCS, it'll be Harper. If they win the World Series, it'll be Turner.
All right, Houston Braves. I've said all year I think the Houston's going to repeat. The Braves have just been too good. I gotta go Braves. I gotta go Braves. I really don't think. I don't have any reason to believe that they're gonna be chokers in the playoffs again. I know what happened last season, and it was a huge disappointment the way everything transpired. But they haven't done it enough for me to say this is a habitual thing. This is going to be a thing that's going to happen every year. So if it does happen this year, then I'm not going to say the same thing next year. But right now, this team is just too good. They haven't dealt with too many injuries even, and they're as long as they stay healthy in this, and that's a big if, but as long as they stay healthy, I really think they're just going to blow through the playoffs very quickly. How many games? I'm not going to go as far to say it's going to be a sweep. But I think it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be close. I'll say like 5-6 games. I'll go 5 games. I really don't think it's going to go.
Do you
It's
think
not
they
gonna be
have
close.
kind of like an Astros-esque run last year where if they do beat, the Phillies or the Marlins in the division series and they go on to beat, whichever team comes out of the NLCS, do you think they sweep
In what, the NLCS?
in both series? The DS and the CS.
I don't know. I'm not going to go that far because I think it's just too hard. I mean, don't get me wrong. They're very, very good. They're best team I think baseball's seen in a very long time. But that's just, I mean, that is, you have to be like 115 win team to be doing that. And even then, it's hard. So I'm going to say no. I don't think any series is going to become all. I mean, I think the closest series would probably be the division series just because it's only 5 games. And we've seen plenty of teams that aren't the greatest in the division series do well because it's just such a short sample size. But even then, I don't see that going more than, I don't know, 3 games, 4 games. I don't think it's going to go to game 5 ever. But yeah. Well, I guess if it was 3 games, it would be a sweep. But I'll say 4 games. I don't think any game's going to put to the last game of the series. But I don't think it's going to be a sweep ever. I think they're going to win a lot by a lot. But I think the other team's at least going to get a game or two. I think it's just how it goes. You're going to have a night where your starter isn't very good. Your bullpen's going to blow a game. Your hitters aren't going to show up for a night. It just happens. But I don't think this is ever going to be particularly close. I think it's going to be a series where you kind of know that the Braves are just going to go away with it. But as for MVP, so I'll say 5. They'll win in 5 games. MVP, I'm gonna go with Acuna. I think Acuna is gonna. You got to realize he missed last season, so much of last season. I think he's determined. I mean, I think even when they won it in 21, he wasn't that involved.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I think he's really. Everybody knows how good of a player he is, but he really wants to prove that I could do it in the playoffs. I could be a big factor into why this team wins it. They need me. This isn't the team that can win without me. They did it once, but they can't do it again. They need me. I think he's really going to show out and be MVP. I hope it doesn't. I hope I'm wrong because I hate the Braves. But I really just maybe I'm biased because I'm a Met fan and the Braves are really like the boogeyman. But I just don't see anybody beating them.
My only thing is, I know they're doing a new practice simulation so that they're not as cold as they were last year in the playoffs. But they're basically the same team. I mean, baseball's a huge team sport. The Phillies beat them last year. The Dodgers beat them 2020, which was the last time they got out. Not many additions. I know they got Olsen. Olsen struggled last year's playoffs. Riley struggled last year's playoffs. You cannot tell me Orlando Arcia is going to be a big star of this team in the playoffs. I can totally be wrong. I mean, someone can really turn it on. Even Strider got rocked last year in Philly. So we'll have to see. I think Acuna is going to be really good or it's going to be really cold. I think you're either going to get one or the other. You're either going to see MVP or you're going to see just
hitting 100 and doing
it. Yeah, like Aaron Judge last year.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see.
I can see that.
So our playoffs are set.
I think those got to be obviously our opinions could change as things go on, but that's got to be in terms of like what we think is going to happen. It's got to be kind of concrete because right now
I like that.
It's the most honest time right now Because then even after a game of a wild card game, even after truly one team could lose a guy, someone tears an ACL, all of a sudden that other team's gonna go ahead and could get hot, and it could change your perception. So I think right now is just really the most honest time to really give these takes. I think it's just anybody that guesses correctly in the time, like right now, deserves the most credit in my eyes.
I like that. I like that. Well, we are coming to the end of our show now. Really great season we saw. I mean, our teams kind of had two different outlooks on it, but I mean, reporting the regular season to you all, having knowing the big information, having our great takes in there, it's really been fun. And now as we move on to the playoffs, that won't stop. We will still be right here, and we'll be here probably a little bit more frequently.
Yeah, I would do definitely an episode after every series.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Do a little recap of what happened, and we will be right back here on the Walkoff. I've been Vince Picone, and always joined with my great co-host Anthony Walsh.
Goodbye.